You don't want to let it be. If you can't set yourself free, take your mind into another place and time. Free yourself up to find the universal mind. The universal mind. The universal mind.
Live from Hollywood, it's Paranormal Tonight. I'm Mark Summers, and now, here's your host, Dan Harary.
Hello, everybody. We're back, and we are live. We are back, and we are live. I'm Dan Harary, broadcasting live from beautiful downtown Beverly Hills, California. And this is Live from Hollywood. It's Paranormal Tonight. And we have a really special guest tonight. I met this wonderful lady once for about 5 minutes years ago, and I've been dying to talk to her ever since. So instead of me just horsing around, I guess I might as well just plug my books. So My Paranormal Life and my two new books, they just came out the other day, brand new on Amazon. My Paranormal Life is a paranormal memoir that I wrote about my UFO sightings, ghosts, poltergeists, angelic voices, spirit guides, and all kinds of very bizarre things. And my little book 5, which a lot of people like, is about a serial killer who gets reincarnated over and over again every 100 years. And my mother actually liked it, and my mother never likes anything. So there must be something special about my little book 5. And of course, After They Came, which is my UFO book, put me on the map. And my other little book here, which is still pretty popular, still selling, Flirting with Fame. That's my Hollywood career. If anybody cares, they're all on Amazon. Dan Harary. Author.com is my website, and all my books are on Amazon. Okay, enough horsing around. I want to introduce my very special guest. Here we go. Kathleen Marden's insatiable interest in UFOs and ET contact began in 1961 when her aunt and uncle, Betty and Barney Hill, people you probably have heard about, had a close encounter and UFO abduction in New Hampshire's White Mountains. As a family member, Kathleen gained firsthand knowledge of Betty and Barney's UFO encounter on the day they arrived home, and then 2 days later, she, her parents, and her siblings visited the Hills' home. She has devoted many years to painstaking investigation of the Hills' anomalous events and archival research on their UFO abduction case. No one knows more about the Betty and Barney Hill UFO phenomenon than my friend Kathy Marden. As the trustee of Betty's estate, she selected files from Betty's personal archives for a permanent collection at the Milne, M-I-L-N-E, Milne Special Collections Library, located at the University of New Hampshire. You can find her case study of the evidence in her book that she co-wrote with the late Stanton Friedman called Captured, the Betty and Barney Hill UFO Experience. She first wrote that book in 2007, and she updated it in 2021. And just before we went on the air, I told her that it was one of the very first books on the UFO phenomenon that I ever read when I got into this field in 2007. I read her book, Captured, right when it had just come out. It was fantastic. I've read it twice. Since 1991, Kathy has been volunteering for the Mutual UFO Network, MUFON, in various positions, such as Director of Field Investigator Training and as the founder and director of MUFON's ERT group, ERT Experiencer Resource Team. And I have quite a few friends personal friends of mine who are in MoveOn's ERT team. Kathy has appeared on over 60 TV and video productions. She's spoken on countless radio shows and podcasts, and she's lectured across the U.S. and around the world in many, many foreign countries. Kathy has authored and or co-authored numerous books and many, many articles in UFO magazines and journals. And she's the recipient of 2 Lifetime Achievement Awards, one from MUFON and the other one from the International UFO Congress. So, Race, let's welcome the one and only Kathy Marden to the show. Hi there. Hey, hi.
Nice to see you, Dan.
Nice to see you too. Thank you so much for doing my dopey show.
I have one correction. It was not a Lifetime Achievement Award for MUFON. It was from the International UFO Congress Conference, but I don't want people from MUFON correcting me tomorrow.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Well, why not? Why did you not get the Lifetime? Who better than you, Kathy?
Good question.
What was the MUFON award? What was it called?
It was like the Researcher of the Year or something like that award.
Okay.
It's that you can see it behind me.
Oh yeah,
standing up there.
Well, you know what? I'm involved with Contact in the Desert, and I need to get you. I need to get you an award next year because they do Lifetime Achievement Awards there as well. You probably know that. All right, so let's just jump right in. You know, for people who have not yet heard about your aunt and uncle, Betty and Barney Hill, very famous couple, and their experience in 1961. And before you answer, I have a couple of pictures to show. Tell us a little bit about who Betty and Barney Hill were and what happened that evening in 1961. And Race, let's pull up slide number 1, please.
Betty and Barney were my aunt and uncle.
Okay.
She was my mother's oldest sister. She grew up in Kingston, New Hampshire on a farm. She was a smart girl. She went to the University of New Hampshire, and she was a social worker for the state of New Hampshire, eventually was promoted to a supervisory position. And my uncle Barney grew up in Philadelphia and in Newport News, Virginia, and spent summers with his aunt and uncle on their farm in Virginia. He was in the Army, went in just before World War II, and was injured. He was hospitalized in Newport News. And then when he was released, he worked for the post office. And he and my aunt met one summer when he and his family were on vacation in New Hampshire. He and his wife ended up getting divorced, and then he got in touch with Betty. Betty owned an apartment house, and she kept some rooms in that home for short-term rentals. Okay. She offered Barney the opportunity to rent an apartment if he came up to New Hampshire again. And they began writing to each other. They remained in contact. They both had the same interests. They were both advocates, activists, really, in the civil rights movement, in human rights. They were doing a lot of good things for other people. And so they had never intended to marry, but they fell in love, and he moved to New Hampshire after they married.
Did they did not have children, did they?
Barney had 2 children, 2 sons
from
his first marriage. Okay. And Betty could not have children, but her first husband had 3 children, and Betty adopted them when they were little and raised them.
That's very cool. Okay. Did you personally know Barney's children? You must have known them.
Yes, I did.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Race number 2, please. All right. So this is a book you wrote along the way, and I just thought it was interesting that you've given your aunt and uncle so much coverage in life because they deserved it, and their story needs to be told and needs to be retold down the generations, right? But do you remember what year you wrote this book?
Well, this is not a book; it's a DVD.
Aha!
And it's I have the hypnosis tapes with
Okay.
Dr. Simon. Betty gave them to me. I did a
Okay.
comparative analysis on their statements, and part of that comparative analysis is encaptured. But I've put that comparative analysis, Betty's voice and Barney's voice, and put in a little discussion by myself as well on their entire journey. The tape's a couple of hours long, and Jennifer Stein helped me with that, and also Bob Terrio helped me to produce that. And that was a few years back. I can't remember the precise year, but it's available on my website. You can purchase a copy of it.
Yeah, I need to get that. I need to get that. I'm sorry, I just assumed that was a book, but I've seen documentaries that had excerpts of Betty and Barney's audio hypnosis sessions, and
Yes.
I assume those came through you.
Most
On
likely.
that DVD, where Betty or Barney, did you or a crew interview them on camera specifically for that DVD, or no?
Betty and Barney were deceased when I put that together.
Okay.
And Barney died in 1969 from a massive cerebral hemorrhage. He was only 46.
Wow.
Betty died in 2004 from lung cancer.
Wow. Okay. Race number 3. This is a lovely photo I just saw online, and you clearly were very fond of your aunt and uncle, weren't you?
I was very fond of them. And this was taken in my office. There was a newspaper from Orlando who came over to interview me. And the photographer for the newspaper had me pose with that photograph right here in my office.
I think it's a very sweet picture. You know, it's almost like you're looking up at heaven and thinking about them.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I really like that picture. Erase the next slide, please, number 4. Okay, here we go. So you co-wrote the book, pretty much about their experience with the late Stanton Friedman. Couple of things. What was Stanton like? And tell us about the Betty and Barney Hill experience. What happened?
Okay. Well, first of all, Stanton had a great sense of humor. He was very, very bright. He was highly knowledgeable about UFOs. He was a nuclear physicist. He'd worked in that field for 14 years. And he, along the way, became interested in UFOs and started researching them. He had met Barney a couple of months before he died. And he and Betty and Barney had actually had dinner together when they were in, I believe it was Pittsburgh, to do a radio show to promote the first book that was ever written about their experience. And Stanton found them to be very credible. He also became very interested in a star map that Betty saw on the craft when she asked the leader where he was from. And he produced this sort of 3-dimensional star map. And Dr. Benjamin Simon, while Betty was in hypnosis, asked her to sketch that map if she could remember it accurately and if it didn't trouble her too much. So she did go home. She sketched it. It was in this first book. And then Marjorie Fish, a brilliant woman from Ohio, spent years attempting to identify those stars by building 3-dimensional models. 14. Now, she finally found a match after we had developed new technology and had better distance data. And Stanton was called in to meet Marjorie, to give his opinion of her and her work, and then to find scientists to vet Marjorie's work, astrophysicists and a statistician. So he was the first person to promote Marjorie's work on that star map as well. So he had an interest in my family's case, and particularly the star map. And that's why I went to Stanton and asked him if he would be interested in joining me in writing this book that I had written quite a bit of at that point.
And in the star map, and I believe it was determined where these extraterrestrials were from. Can you tell us where they were from?
Yes, it was the Zeta Reticulum star system. two stars, Zeta 1 and Zeta 2. There were 12 stars that were connected by lines. Some were trade routes and others were just expeditions. Now, you had asked me what happened to Betty and Barney. Very briefly, they were returning home from a vacation in Niagara Falls and Montreal through Canada, and they were returning home at night. And this was over a period of a few days. And Betty saw a new star in the sky, and it was moving in an irregular pattern. And she was watching it, wondering what it was. And they stopped and they looked at it a couple of times as it came in closer and closer and closer. And finally, it just shot ahead of their vehicle and stopped right beside the road. Barney had to stop the car in the middle of the road in order not to be directly underneath it. And he got out of the car, left the door open, looked up at this craft, stepped away. When he stepped away, the craft shifted to an adjacent field. It was now about 50 feet overhead and 100 feet away, something like that. And he, through binoculars, looked up and he saw figures that he described as being somehow not human, dressed in black, shiny uniforms. Okay. All were looking down at him. Suddenly, all but one turned and went to what appeared to be a panel. Their arms went up, and when this happened, little fin-like structures began to slide out from the craft, and something started to drop down from the bottom of the craft. We know now what that is and what it looks like because it's been photographed. It's a beam, sort of a carrier beam. And Barney at that moment had the sense that they were going to capture him like, quote, a bug in a net, close quote. Okay. And that is when he tore the binoculars away from his eyes so forcefully that he broke the leather strap and went running back to the car. Betty could hear his feet pounding on the pavement as he was running to get away. He threw the binoculars onto the seat, and as he was entering the car, he looked up, and there was the craft heading in his direction. He went speeding down the highway, and within moments, he and Betty heard a series of code-like buzzing sounds striking the trunk of their vehicle. It caused their car to vibrate and for a tingling sensation to pass through their bodies. In fact, Betty felt of the metal on the car, but she didn't receive an electric shock. So this happened. The next thing they knew, they were in a new location, 35 miles approximately down the road on a different road. They were now on a major highway instead of on the state highway they had been on. They heard another series of buzzing sounds, and Barney told Betty to look to see if she could see the craft. She looked, and it was not there this time, but they did have memories of finding themselves on a dirt road with tall trees all around, of observing a fiery orb that seemed to be sitting on the road, and of a roadblock. When they arrived home, they realized that they were later than they had anticipated. They thought they'd be home between 2 and 3 a.m. It was now after 5 a.m. And the tops of Barney's best dress shoes were so deeply scraped, he had to buy new shoes. Betty's dress was torn in several places. A tear in the thick zipper fabric and on the back of her dress. In the stitching, the lining was torn. Her watch was broken. Barney's watch was broken. Later that day, after she phoned my mother, and that's when I heard about what had happened to them, she took a compass out to the car to see what the compass would do. A physicist friend of ours, a neighbor, told my mother to tell Betty to do that. So she took it out, and when she held the compass over those shiny spots where they had heard those buzzing sounds the night before, there was the needle would spin rapidly, indicating a magnetic field. When she moved it away, the needle dropped down. Barney tried it. The people who lived upstairs from Betty tried it as well. So it did the same thing for all of them. There was a magnetic field there.
That's crazy. What I believe I heard just recently there was a dog in the car, their dog. Is that right?
There was a little dachshund. Yes, Delcy.
And what happened? Did Delcy have any experiences or traumas or anything?
Well, when the car was, when the craft was causing that code-like buzzing sound on the trunk of their car, it hurt Delcy's ears. I know that because she was standing up on the back seat, Betty told me, and her ears were kind of propped up a little bit.
Wow.
And also, when they arrived home, Delcy developed a fungus infection on her back. Now, it's a possibility that the people who were on that craft had delivered that fungus from their hands to the dog's back, because what is on Betty's dress, which there was a pink powdery substance that grew on her dress.
Right.
And that is either some kind of a fungus or a yeast. And so the dog developed a problem with a skin infection. Also, when she would fall asleep, her little legs would run and she'd yip. So she was apparently frightened.
Wow. Did Betty or Barney have memories of the dog being on the craft with them?
They did not. They thought that Delcy had remained in the car. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Also, I've read or heard that Barney considered getting his gun out of the trunk, or he did get a gun out. Did he pull a gun out that day?
He did, but this was quite a while before their capture. And it wasn't because he feared this craft. He didn't even believe that UFOs were real. He and Betty stopped beside the road, and there were bears in the area. And it was a picnic area. So Barney took the gun out of the trunk of the car because he was going to go into the woods and use the bathroom and walk the dog. And so he could shoot the gun off if a bear came near, and scare the bear away.
So it was a bear preventative, not an ET preventative.
Right. That was the reason then. But when he did walk into that field, he put the gun into his suit jacket pocket.
And so they lost about 3 hours of time. Is that correct?
It was 2 to 3 hours.
I mean, that's a
more
lot.
closer to 2.
That's a long time. Just a quick question. One of our viewers says, were Betty and Barney religious? Did they know anything about the occult? I don't think they knew. Were they religious?
Betty and Barney were Unitarian. They went to the Universalist Unitarian Church in Portsmouth, New Hampshire every Sunday. They were actively involved in the church, and they were envoys to the UN through their church.
Okay. And we have about a minute before a break, Kathy. I've seen the movie twice. I think I spoke to you once, and you weren't too thrilled with the movie, or your family wasn't. What were your feelings about the family? What were your feelings about the movie, the TV movie?
Well, James Earl Jones did a terrific job, but the thing that disappointed me is that it didn't tell the real story. It gave the impression that they didn't have any memory of anything except for seeing a light in the sky, and that Betty had all these dreams, and they could have come to believe that this was an experience, but it was probably, or it could have been Betty's dreams. And there was a lot of information in that movie that was simply inaccurate.
Well, they showed Betty and Barney being meeting with a therapist, right?
Yes.
And they recalled some of their experiences audibly with audio recording. Was some of that? I mean, you must have been involved with that production in some way, right?
I knew Dr. Benjamin Simon. He was a renowned psychiatrist. Barney was referred to him because Barney ended up in the hospital with bleeding ulcers. This was bothering him so badly. He was terrified. He wasn't able to sleep. And he was finally referred to Dr. Simon. Dr. Simon took Betty and Barney separately, and he reinstated amnesia at the end of each session, so they could not share information. Also, Dr. Simon said that at some times, Betty and Barney were so traumatized that if he had permitted them to remember this immediately during therapy, that it could have induced additional trauma.
Wow.
So,
wow. Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry. We have to take a little break, couple of minutes. We'll be right back with Kathleen Marden talking about her aunt and uncle, Betty and Barney Hill. Race, let's rock and roll, man.
While most near-death experiencers return to this plane of existence with alluring tales of their time spent in the presence of the divine, what happens when one crosses the veil into the afterlife, into the void? In the new book, Dying to Meet Them, Mindy Toutfest describes her journey to the afterlife after a devastating aneurysm, how a strange turn of events would lead her to spiritual growth, divine healing, UFO experiences, and a greater understanding of the universe. Get your copy of Dying to Meet Them today at Amazon.com or visit unxmedia.com for more information on this book and more amazing selections from UNX Media Publishing at unxmedia.com.
This is Margie Kay, and I'd like to say thank you to all of our KUNX show hosts, staff, listeners, and viewers for making us number one on Paranormal Talk Radio.
This September 6th through the 13th, join with like-minded souls in the experience of a lifetime on the Royal Caribbean Ovation of the Seas as we travel from Seattle to Alaska. Internationally renowned researchers, investigators, experiencers, authors, holistic healers, contactees, spiritual luminaries will sail on an extraordinary voyage of transformation. This cruise will explore UFOs, alien contact, cover-ups, ancient mysteries, the paranormal, holistic healing, and spirituality. Experience engaging lectures, one-on-one sessions, private, custom-tailored excursions, and a nightly UFO watch. The cruise is booking up fast. Go to contactatsea.com and be sure to mention the UNX Network when you book. That's contactatsea.com or phone 336-749-1219. That's 336-749-1219.
And we're back with the one and only Kathy Marden. And sorry about that. My joke is that we have to pay some bills in between to keep this little show on going on the air. Kathy, do you think you would have pursued your career path had Betty and Barney Hill not become Betty and Barney Hill? What were your life plans, independent of a major UFO sighting?
Well, that depends upon what age I was, but when Betty and Barney were abducted, in that time frame, I thought that I wanted to become a microbiologist.
Wow.
And then I went on and thought later that I wanted to go to medical school. I ended up becoming an educator. First a social worker, and I wasn't crazy about social work, so I did graduate work in education. and I was an educator and an education services coordinator for many years. But I had met all of those early investigators. Betty always brought everyone to the house. And so I had the opportunity to meet people like Jacques Vallée. I had dinner at Dr. Simon's home, John Fuller, you name it, the early investigators, Walter Webb and Robert Holman and C.D. Jackson and Dr. James Harder. It goes on. And I watched them in action, and I thought, boy, I would love to do that. And I always say, when I was young, my favorite book series was Nancy Drew, the girl detective series.
Sure, of course.
And so I had that career as an educator, and then I became ill. I was debilitated, and I had to remain at home. I had to leave my position. Right. And so I thought about, what can I do with my time? I need intellectual stimulation. Right. And I'd always wanted to become an author, but my aunt talked me out of it. But now was the time when I said to her, I'd like to write a book about you. I want to investigate your case, and as thoroughly as I possibly can. And I want to write a book about you. And she said, okay. And we took trip after trip up to the White Mountains. All kinds of interviews, anything I could think of to ask her. I have all of her files, and all of the files I've collected in my investigation as well. My husband and I drove the entire route that Betty and Barney drove that night on the roads that they were on, instead of the major highways we have now, just looking to see if there was some kind of prosaic explanation. And we were 20 years older than they were. One of the debunkers said that they must have been hallucinating because they'd been driving for so long. But my husband and I weren't hallucinating. Right. I could disprove that. So just a tremendous amount of research. I have the hypnosis tapes, transcribed them for comparative analysis, and on.
I've seen one of the many documentaries, or it might have been a TV show I saw you were in, and they were testing Betty's dress, and they cut little they cut out little snippets of the back of the dress.
I did, yes.
And had it tested. And you mentioned earlier that they found fungus. Is that what they found when they tested the dress samples, was fungus?
They really, that was more speculation. On the one that you saw, I was at the University of New Hampshire with Ben Hansen.
That sounds right, yeah.
And so we were examining the dress, and we were looking at the lining this time. Now, a sample from the back of the dress, the lining had already been taken, and it was just spider blood. But we found something that looked like it could have been blood near her navel.
Okay.
And so decided to cut a sample from that. And so I did that. I also had a sample of Betty's blood on a disc because I'm the person who's been in charge of coordinating this research. And so we sent it to MUFON's biological scientist, and she did a DNA analysis on it. What we found is that what appeared to be blood came from the inside next to her skin. It did not permeate the outside of the dress. So we know that it wasn't a spill. Betty didn't spill anything on her dress. It came from the inside. Now, the DNA indicated that this was fluid from Betty's body. And that could prove that her needle in the navel testimony memory was a true memory.
Wow. Yeah. So you have real concrete data there.
We do have that. Some scientists recently found 2 medals on the dress that have really no conventional explanation for how they got there. These were college professors at the University of Pittsburgh in Bradford, and 35 years experience, tenured chemistry professors. They found tellurium and rhodium on Betty's dress. And tellurium has a very high melting point, and it's one of the rarest metals in the Earth's crust in the universe.
Wow.
Rhodium is also extraordinarily rare and expensive. It is harder than platinum, but lighter. And as I said, extraordinarily rare. The scientists could not think of any prosaic explanation for how those two metals arrived on Betty's dress.
Fantastic. One of our viewers, Just Insane, wrote, "What happened to the car that they were abducted in?" I mean, do you own that car?
No, I'm laughing because so many antique car enthusiasts have contacted me
About
over
the car?
the past 20 years. What happened to the car? And we've looked and looked. No one has been able to find that car.
Did Barney just sell it somewhere along the way?
Well, it was Betty's car, and she gave it to her daughter. Her daughter was married to an Air Force man. They were being stationed at another base, and they drove the car to that other base, and eventually they sold the car, traded it in for a new one. And
wow, what a collector's item! Could you imagine?
It would be. Can you? But I love to own it.
And it had those round circles on the trunk, right? Round circles of the paint was missing. Is that correct?
The paint was not missing. It was just as if someone had highly polished those areas. They were like the size of a $50 maybe.
Right.
And they were just highly, highly polished.
And you saw them with your own eyes, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
God, that car, man. Can imagine if you just toured you and the car. You could have made a whole living just touring the car. You could charge $5 to sit in the car for 3 minutes or something. All right, let's move forward a little bit. You were the founder and emeritus director of MUFON's Experiencer Resource Team, ERT. Tell us a little bit about how that came about and your work with MUFON.
Well, MUFON asked me to help them out by forming this team. And initially, I was writing the protocols for how to investigate an alien abduction, what they called it in those days. And so Denise Stoner and I worked on that together. We worked on many things, and we wrote that. And then I started talking to experiencers, and I guess it was the director of investigations would assign me to an experiencer that I would talk to. And the state directors did not like that at all. They wanted their case. They did not want me talking to anybody in their state. So I said, well, what do we do now? Right. And they said, well, I'd already completed with Denise a survey on experiencers, commonalities among experiencers. And they asked me to take some of those questions and create a questionnaire that would go online, and that people who wanted to come to members of my team for support, for non-judgmental conversation, would be able to contact us by completing the questionnaire, and then one of us would speak with them. The team was very small. It started as 3 people and grew. Today, there are 80 people on the team, including the consultants. So it's grown over the years. And when we started out, those conversations were confidential too. So people felt comfortable getting in touch with us and would have a supportive conversation with them. Now, most people would say, you're going to think I'm crazy. And that's the first thing that would come out of their mouth.
And then you should say, no, Betty and Barney Hill were my aunt and uncle. So
No.
that's the first thing you should say, right?
I did say that oftentimes.
Right?
Yes,
It was the first thing out of my mouth.
No, I know that this happens. I don't know if it happened to you. You have, I say, I don't live in your body. I don't live in your house. I don't know what your experiences are, but you could keep a journal. You could begin to collect evidence, and then you can determine for yourself if this truly is happening to you, or if you have sleep paralysis or sleep hallucinations or something like that. So that's what I would teach people to do. And a lot of them stayed in touch with me and collected evidence, and a lot of evidence. And yes, they absolutely were experiencers.
That's so cool. One of my best friends is your mentee, Earl Grey Anderson.
Oh, yes. He tells me that he's a close friend of yours.
We are very good. We became very good friends very quickly.
And he's a nice person.
He's a lovely person. He adores you. If you didn't know that,
he tells me that all the time.
You're like his fairy godmother, Kathy. Just so you know, if you didn't know, you lived with Aunt Betty after Barney passed in '69, and you told me some unusual occurrences happened in her house when you lived there. That I never heard. So tell us about that.
Absolutely, there was some kind of psychological operation going on to intimidate Betty.
I see. Okay.
And her home was being entered, and weird things were being done. One day she arrived home from work, and all of the clothing was taken from her closet, piled in a pile on her living room floor, and Barney's scarf was laid over the top. Another time, I was downstairs studying. We had an interquorum between my apartment and Betty's. Okay. And I heard footsteps. I heard the door open, footsteps come in. So I thought, I'll just go upstairs and say hello. So I went up the stairs and no Betty. Well, I went back downstairs again. I thought she'd just come in for a moment and left. But when I arrived down and went to pick up my book again, I heard crash, bang, feet running really fast. And so I dashed up the stairs, and the closet door was wide open. A baseball bat was on the floor. The front door to her apartment was standing wide open. I ran down the hallway. The front door was open. The gate was open, and a man in a suit was running up the street.
So were some of these occurrences paranormal, and others were Betty was being spied on, in your opinion? There
was some paranormal activity. Somehow, this didn't happen when I lived with her. This was before. But somehow the earrings that she was wearing that night ended up on her dining room table in a pile of leaves.
And she never figured that one out, right? That's a
she
tough
didn't
one.
figure that one out. Other paranormal events, her clock would change time automatically, and a year from the time that Barney died, her clock changed the time. And after Betty died, the same thing happened to my clock.
Wow.
That was so funny.
So when you lived there, it sounds like the government or military, whoever, they were spying on her, testing her clothing. Did she think her phones were tapped? Do you know?
Yes, she knew her phones were tapped. She had evidence of that and witnesses to that. Also, her tax forms, all of her files were ready to go to the accountant. She had them prepared. And when she went to take them, they were missing. Wow. She had to get an extension. She had to do all the work to get all of the receipts from the companies. And then all of her tax files appeared scattered throughout her apartment all over the floor.
So intimidation tactics were going on.
Yes,
Like
intimidation.
like Betty, it's enough already. Stop telling the world there's aliens. Go away. Be quiet. Be quiet. Stop talking. Right.
I think so. I mean, it was intimidation. She didn't tell the public about that because people would be saying, "Oh, she's paranoid," or "She's making this up for
Yeah.
attention." That's just the way people were in those days.
But you knew her very well, and you knew she wouldn't
It
do
was
that.
happening. It was definitely happening.
Did she ever have any classic Men in Black stories, ringing her doorbell and threatening her to bury her in the desert like they did with the Roswell people?
I can only tell you that one of her neighbors was in a wheelchair, and he was out on his porch, and he saw two men dressed in black suits when she was not home enter her apartment.
Wow.
So
So there is some indication that perhaps the real Men in Black were very fond of your aunt, so to speak, right? They were obsessed with her stuff. I want to ask you about you've written quite a few books.
yes.
Race, can we jump to number 6, please? Slide number 6. Okay. Kathy, I almost called you Betty. Sorry, Kathy. Give us a little synopsis. I want to run through some of your books. They're all fascinating, but tell us about some of this one in particular.
Science Was Wrong is a book that Stanton and I wrote. He wrote, I think it was 7 chapters, and I wrote 7 chapters. And it is the history of science dating back to a couple of 100 years now. And scientists who knew they were right destroyed the careers of those who they knew were wrong. And a lot of times it was just over money and power. And eventually those who had been disgraced and said that, this, if you had a smallpox vaccine, you would grow an udder or something like that.
Wow.
Start mooing. That, that kind of thing. Those who were the targets of the wealthy, prestigious scientists ended up being right. And so the last section of the book is about UFOs and ET contact.
Well,
the other part is straight science.
I need to get this book. It's just the cover I love. I saw a docudrama recently. It's on UFO TV. It's about Tesla. And in this, it's a docudrama. They show Tesla is he's digging ditches. He's digging ditches. And somehow he gets introduced to Thomas Edison. And they bring him up, some friends of his bring him to Edison. And Edison did, I think, alternating current or whatever it was. And Tesla said, no, DC is a better way to go. And Edison says, what, are you crazy? What, are you crazy? No, we're not going to do DC. I did AC, alternating current. No, Mr. Edison, with all due respect. So they had this thing. And then Tesla went off and on his own and became Nikola Tesla. And his system was much, much better. I don't know if he's in your book, Science Was Wrong, but that would have been good about Thomas Edison.
And we didn't write about that. We thought about writing a second one, but we never did get around to.
If you do another one, put in Edison and Tesla, because Edison was, he was a real bastard.
Yes, I know.
The reason Hollywood came to LA, the real reason, other than the sun and the weather, is Edison had patents on all the motion picture film and the cameras and the projectors. And people in New York and New Jersey, where the film industry was born, they said, screw this guy Edison, man. He's taking all our money from the royalties. Screw him. We'll go 3,000 miles away. So when Hollywood was formed, Edison's lawyers came to LA and tried to sue everyone. And they said, go screw you, get lost. Because it was so far away. And their turn said nothing ever happened.
Edison was all for himself, and he was. Participated in a lot of underhanded activities.
Yeah, not a pleasant man, apparently. Race number 7, please. And okay, Kathy, tell us about this one.
This one is 6 cases of alien abduction that I have investigated. I did the hypnosis on a number of them. The first third of the book is about Ed and Denise Stoner. Denise is a member of the ERT. I've worked with her for years, but I didn't know her when I first met her. And when I investigated her case, she was new to me. But I just want to say that so that people will know this is not biased. This is an unbiased account of Denise's lifelong contact experiences. Also, a very important case that I investigated when I lived up in New Hampshire, Jenny Henderson and her family, a multi-generational abduction case again, and then several additional cases of alien abduction, ET contact. And one of them is Tom Reed. His case is in there. He's pretty famous among experiencers.
You mentioned you hypnotized Denise, you personally, or you were in the room when she was?
No,
You're a hypnotherapist?
Well, retired, but I'm a hypnotherapist and quantum healing hypnosis practitioner.
Okay, so I didn't know that. Next week, Yvonne Smith is going to hypnotize me.
Oh,
because I have missing time. We don't have time now, but when I was 5 years old, I was climbing a billboard sign with two little girlfriends. 5 years old, I climbed up a very tall, probably 30-foot tall billboard sign in my hometown of New Jersey. I fell off the sign. I remember falling off. I floated on my back, looking at the sky, Kathy, looking up at the sky, and I fell in slow motion. I remember falling in slow motion, and then I have missing time. And I woke up. I don't know when, how much time, on a couch in a stranger's house 2 blocks away from the sign. And when I got up, I said, hello, hello. I'm 5 years old. Hello, is anyone here? No one was there. And I got up to leave. There was a 7-foot tall cryptid at the front door, white chocolate color. It was half bull and half angel, and had the face of a bull. And it looked over its shoulder, and it snorted. Literally, it snorted at me. And I'm like, that thing doesn't like me. I remember. And then it disappeared. So that's my story. But I have missing time from falling in slow motion to waking up with a cryptid. Something pretty cool happened to me. And I'm 68. I'd like to know before I pass what the hell happened that day.
And Yvonne Smith is an excellent person to go to. She's been doing this for many, many years.
I'm so excited. Also, you and I have another mutual friend, Debbie Jordan Cobble.
Yes, absolutely.
I love her. She's lovely.
I do too.
She's wonderful. Race number 8, please. Kathy, you're so prolific, man. All right, how about this one?
Fact, fiction, and flying saucers. The history of government involvement in the investigation of UFOs, their major studies, their findings, their decision to cover up their findings, who was involved in the cover-up, why they covered it up, and the modus operandi of those individuals who carried out this operation that was funded by the CIA. It was the Robertson panel that made this decision in January of 1953. Wow. And so that's what the book is all about. It's case after case after case. Travis Walton's case, Lonnie Zamora.
All the greatest hits, all the ufology's
some of the greatest hits, and what these disinformants did to try to destroy these people and their lives.
Wow, fabulous. You're a champion. Have you ever collaborated with Richard Dolan?
Not on a book, no.
Okay, just curious. All right, race number 9. Number nine. Okay, how about this one?
When I was the director of the ERT, I thought that it would be a good idea to write a book for experiencers. So this is a book about, it includes some of my best cases, both positive and negative and somewhere in between. It's tells you what to do if you've had ET contact, how to document it, what to purchase so that you can capture it on camera, that kind of thing. If you want to make it stop, what you can do to make it stop. It's just loaded with information. It has been called the best book ever written on that topic. And
do you suggest to these people that they do retro hypnosis? regression hypnosis? Is that one of your things that you propose?
Well, hypnosis has been studied academically many times, but what they have learned is that hypnosis by a good hypnotherapist who knows all about this, and more than one session, unless you're doing QHHT, which is hours on end,
Right.
but it is the best thing that you can do therapeutically to recover from the trauma, to have your questions answered.
And to be in a safe space while
Yes.
because you're bonding with whoever it is that's hypnotizing you. So
Yes.
you need, like you said, you need someone that you can trust for sure.
Yes. Someone who is highly experienced.
Right. We have a little bit of time left. Number 10, Race. Number 10. This one,
My
I think,
latest.
this is your latest book. Tell us about this one.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is my personal journey from alien abduction to spiritual transformation. So my Aunt Betty was doing contact experiments, the E5 experiments, trying to get craft to land on my grandparents' farm. It landed when I was 17 years old. It was, there were witnesses to it. What we never said is my mother and I ended up on the craft that night under hypnosis. I might have been taken much, much earlier.
Wow.
I don't know for certain, but that's what I said under hypnosis. It's my
Your journey.
personal journey.
That's very,
through
very
my life with Betty, through my career, how it changed me.
Do you have any lucid memories of being on a craft or not really?
Oh no, I did.
You
When
did?
I was taken to craft when I was 17, it changed me completely. I remembered being on that craft. I remembered those non-humans standing around me. I remembered lying on that table.
Wow.
I remembered what they were doing to me. I had physical pain the following day. My life changed completely. I had been very outgoing. I was popular. I was elected to the student council. And all of a sudden, I just became quiet and introspective and frightened, scared to death about this.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Took a
that
long
happened.
time for me to get over it, but I did.
You sure did. I'm sorry that happened to you. You know, there's a lot of people theorize that it happens in families, and apparently with Betty and Barney and you, it happened in your family and your mother. You said your mother too, right?
Yes.
Your mother?
And
Wow.
yes, and we have statistics on that. And more than 50% of experiencers say that they are aware that this is intergenerational in their families.
That's really interesting. We have just a hair left. Tell us, do you have any new books or films or TV shows coming out anytime soon?
Oh, I should be on a TV show that should be coming up sometime in September.
Oh, cool. Do you know we can't talk about it yet?
Can't talk about it yet.
All right, let me know. Let me know. I'll tell everyone in the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance. If you email me, I'll share that.
Okay, sure. And go to my website and please fill out the Marden Barton survey on religious belief in extraterrestrial life. That's what we're working on now. We're going to be writing a book on it, Dr. Melanie Barton Bragg and I.
That's wonderful. You are like you are the Stephen King of ufology, Kathy. You are so prolific and so lovely. Thank you very much for doing this for me. I really appreciate it.
Great to be with you.
I hope you get a chance to go to Contact in the Desert next year. I'd love to hang out with you and have lunch with you. That'd be wonderful.
Well, that would be great. If they invite me, I'll probably go.
I had lunch with Ron Janix the other day. I told him we need to get you there. I'll try to make that happen.
Okay.
Thank you, Kathy. Next week, who the hell is on my show next week? Oh, Michael Schratt is on my show next week. And my dad worked for the Army and invented military drones that involved ET technology. So I can't wait to talk to Michael Schratt about my father. That'll be great next week. Thank you, Kathy, very much. Go to Kathleen-Marden.com. And that's it. And that's all. Thank you, Race, my brother, my producer. And I'll see you next week live from Hollywood. It's Paranormal Tonight.